So my name is Joan Rubin. I'm the interim executive director of the SDM program. I've been with SDM for about 5 years now, and I come out of a background of both medical device, but I also have a MIT background many years ago, and it has been an absolute pleasure to come back here and try and think about how do we educate the next generation for systems thinking and systems challenges. And so it's been, I always enjoy coming here on an annual basis and running this conference because I think it's a great way to get a glimpse of what our faculty is teaching, what some of the industry leaders are thinking in this area. And then I think to the point of Raj here, as well as Leandre this morning, is how have alumni of our program taken some of the things that they've learned and gone out and applied them into the broader world. So it's my pleasure to be able to introduce Raj. Raj is, as I just indicated, a graduate of the MIT SDM program, and he's currently a visiting scholar here at MIT. He's also a senior lecturer and the director of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center at the Asia School of Business, which was co-founded both by the MIT Sloan School of Management and Bank Negara in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Mr. Nair is a product designer and a serial entrepreneur. He founded and he serves as chairman of Degree Controls, which helps develop solutions for thermal design of high reliability electronic products in medical, information technology, military, and consumer markets. He's developed several industry standard products and holds 13 US patents. Raj received the Entrepreneur of the Year Award from the New Hampshire High Tech Council, and he was a finalist for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year for New England. Mr. Nair holds 2 bachelor's degrees, one in physics from the University of Kerala and one in electronics and communications engineering from the Indian Institute of Science. As a graduate degree of the MIT SDM program, he also holds a master's degree in engineering and management from here at MIT. Mr. Nair's personal mission is to create 1,000 entrepreneurs in the next 3 years through the method he developed here at MIT. He founded NCube Labs to address his mission through teaching curriculum that changes attitudes about entrepreneurship for students in schools and universities, as well as the communities in which they live. Please join me in welcoming Raj Nair this afternoon to speak on a systems-based approach to creating entrepreneurs and the ecosystems that sustain them.
Thank you so much. I may also be one of the oldest of SDM fellows to join, so don't let the good looks fool you. When I joined SDM in my second semester, I got this fellowship from Tata Center, and Mr. Ratan Tata, suggested the goal of the fellowship is to go to resource-constrained communities and find a problem and use everything that you have in MIT to solve it. And as an entrepreneur and as someone who has been working on developing innovators in India for the last 11 years through a national competition that I started long back, I decided that I want to create a process of creating entrepreneurs. I was so determined to do that. I went to my advisor, Professor Charlie Fine, and he listened to me, and finally he said, so what model do you have to do this? So I started doing all kinds of literature survey, and I found that there's a lot of literature on how entrepreneurs behaved after they became entrepreneurs. But I was interested in the prequel, the BC, not the AD. I didn't, of course, once the entrepreneur is out there, then you can actually, they have done a lot of things. So finally I said, maybe I should actually look into my own life and see what stages did I go through my life, and maybe see if I can model that and create a program to repeat that and see what results come out. So a little bit about me. It's kind of creepy talking about myself. So assume I'm talking about someone else in the first person. So okay, I was born in a lower middle class family in India, and I was in a little village in South India. So right from when I was a kid, I used to make things. My favorite place to hang out was a local transistor radio service guy, his shop, and started making electronic things and amplifiers and speakers and all these kind of things. And I did after I did the electrical engineering undergrad, I wanted to be a product designer, so I did a master's in product design and decided I need to understand how things are made. So I came to UMass Amherst to do a MS in manufacturing engineering, in mechanical engineering, and started working designing products. And so I started off as a maker. So then my first baby was born. Babies don't come with user manual. And young parents, we didn't know which end to take care of for the baby at what time. It was a little infant. So I was responsible for cleaning and everything else, and my wife was responsible for feeding. And that was an agreement we had. Of course, physical limitations. So she was doing that, and I was changing diapers and burping and all these kind of things, and she used to get diaper rash quite often. And of course, my wife used to give me hell, that you're not cleaning and you're not changing and such. So here I am lying in my bed looking to see, how do we solve this? Okay, one is a deterministic event. I can change diapers when I have to change. I have no idea when she wets it. Okay, so, got an idea. Put 2 safety pins on a diaper, pull 2 wires, connect it to a little electronic board, and programmed a chip to play nursery rhymes, twinkle, twinkle, little star, when the resistance falls below a certain limit. And she had this wire coming out of her crib, lying there. And she, I would hear the song and say, I know I want to change. And that problem went away, till she started turning and crawling, and so I had to, adopt the product. And my friends all looked at it, oh wow, they all had kids at the same time, same age kids. So they said, can you make one for me? And I started making one for them. And somebody said, you should start a company. I said, I never thought I could actually do a company. So I said, wow, they all said you should start a company. So I put a lot of money down, injection molded plastic, made the electronics, and I made several of these things and went around trying to sell this to mothers. I said, your kid won't get diaper rash, your kid will be fine, you don't have to take her to the hospital, and nothing. Mothers wouldn't buy this. It was much later, 10 years later, that somebody just asked me, did you try to sell it to dads? I didn't. So customer segmentation right there. And that company failed. I lost all the money I did put in, and that is where I learned the most in my whole process. Second company was, I started with someone else, and the third company has been running for 20 years. Bootstrap went up, came down, came 24 hours close to bankruptcy, and suddenly pulled back, and all those things. So my midlife crisis was to come back to school. Okay, so I came back here, I did STM, and took on this thing, and so that became my work. I absolutely wanted to create a program, a process to create entrepreneurs, because for every entrepreneur that you see here, I think there are 1,000. There's another 1,000 who have the potential but never been exposed out in the world. And if you can actually touch them and change them, you could actually change their life. This was my patent. Okay, and it actually had a toilet training also built in, so I could, I had 6 months of data on when she pooped and peed, which I could learn, patterns and things like that, so predict, so they can toilet train the baby. Today's policies and programs that you see across the world for creating entrepreneurs, billions of dollars have been spent on this, are all being primarily focused on the few people who show their aspiration to become an entrepreneur. And that means it takes certain confidence, it takes certain exposure. I believe there is a lot of people already working on helping them. I believe I want to focus on this group. And question is, can we help these kids in colleges, in developing countries, and it's several different areas. Can we help them come out of their do something very different? So I've been running these programs for quite some time. I found the 3 major factors that affect their thinking, the factors that for transformation. One is internal, which is self-confidence and learning that you go through trying and failing and such. Other one is external. What kind of ecosystem do they have around them? What kind of culture are they in to help them? And the other one, last, is interventional. How early can you get into touch these kids and change their life? Because I believe the fastest, if you want to see the fastest result, I would go for university students. They are independent, they can go try things. If you really want to see a long-term result, you want to go down to the schools, middle school and high school. And so this became my learning. And of course, you can never go without a system dynamics modeling or anything being a STM student, but this is not exactly the model. So the process was, you have a bunch of students, you have a universe of students, and some of them aspire to be entrepreneurs. Some of them go start companies, and then some of them just go out and do much larger things after that. And in India, when I was doing my research, I found that in rural areas, the conversion was about 5,000 to 1. So in several years, you don't see student entrepreneurs come out of a school. Okay. I think in cities, it may be about 1,000 to 1. I think in MIT, it may be 100 to 1. How 100 students to how many students, this kind of conversion from student to entrepreneurs. And obviously, in a student or a university community, you have an ecosystem that supports students to become aspiring entrepreneurs and start up. And once you have certain entrepreneurs, you'll have investors coming in. Investors at the end of the day are entrepreneurs who feed off other entrepreneurs. And once they come in, then you have them supporting the ecosystem more. And of course, some universities start their programs, and government at some point get involved, and they support all these programs. But the real key, the bottleneck to all these things, is here. How do you initiate the first round of entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs from this community of students? And once that happens, then the flow starts, it's self-sustaining. And that is where my focus is. Go to a bunch of kids and get them started. So the basic framework I started with is from my own life, was that in these universities, you'll see kids who want to graduate and find a job and settle down, And I grew up in India, so my father used to say, find a job, government job there too, and settle down and get married and, die. So it is pretty much, that's the life that they say you should follow. And I don't think it is much different anywhere else. When I go in Malaysia, Vietnam, or when I go teach in these places, it is pretty much still the same. Okay. So the uninitiated kids who didn't know they could be entrepreneurs, who didn't know they could actually do a lot of things, they actually go through the whole life without ever capitalizing or ever attaining their potential. So the second stage from there, the next stage I want to make them to is called the maker. Maker is where you learn to make things. With digital fabrication, I go around teaching these things. I'll just show in a little while. How do you making as a habit? That means you don't learn to play the violin when you have a concert that evening. You've learned several years before. Similarly, making is something that you do several times before you can innovate things. So the whole purpose of a maker is just design, make, and play. Just have fun. Don't worry about solving any large problems. Just have fun making things. So I created this program called 48-Hour Maker Fest, which I go around doing all over the world. This primarily starts with ideation. Get a bunch of kids on a Friday afternoon and till Sunday afternoon. Within this 48 hours, they learn the ideation process, they learn presentation skills, they learn, take a concept and how do you interact with the product that you're trying to make, or user experience and such. Then they learn electronics, coding, they learn CAD, 3D printing, and they learn fabrication. okay? All in that 48 hours. And obviously, teamwork. This is very, very critical because in most colleges, this is a zero net sum job. That means if someone become better than you can't be. Two people can't have the same grade. Everyone is trying to push the other one down, because they are all graded on the individual performance. So teams don't form in these colleges. They don't support each other and help. So when I go to these kids, and I've worked with about 200-300 teams, student teams, and I can almost sense in the first few minutes how this team is going to end up. Because in some cases, you always have one dominant male. It normally is a guy, who would assume that his idea is the best, and he would force others to come with him, and halfway through, everyone else just loses. They just gives in and so fine, whatever you want to do, we'll do. And there was no passion, there was no force, nothing after that. Okay, so I can feel it. At the moment, just a few minutes, and I can see it. Braggadocious comes into my mind. I just learned that 2 days back. So. So these 48-hour programs. This is an example where this is last year when I went to Malaysia. I started with this program as a outreach program. These are 17-year-old kids, high school graduates, pre-university.
Baby cradle, which when you place, there's a pressure sensor below it. When you place the baby in, you activate the pressure sensor and it will start to rock.
That's our product. We call it the Cockroach Busters, alright? So yeah, this is a sample.
Also, just to provide a more, another hand, a third hand.
Should pop up into your mind. Did I lock my car?
Prize winner for the FIE team, Baby Cradle.
So I've done about 10, 15 of these things. We can even actually, I just did all week last week at the executive education program at Sloan for CXOs, executives. They were learning to code and CAD and things like that. People who are older than me. Okay, and they enjoyed it. They absolutely. That is how you start, creating, triggering them. So, what kind of things do they come up with? Have you heard of a useless box? No. It's just that when you turn it on, it will turn itself off. It can get angry, and play with you. But now, you're all engineers, you can actually think about this as a system. While they're designing it, they have to absolutely figure out what the user experience should be first. From there, they have to design what kind of physical product do they design. I think this audio is still not there, okay?
Excellent.
So they need to actually start with that. User experience, then from there, physically, what kind of product it should be, how much does it weigh, and how big is it, and then you have to design the mechanical parts and electrical and coding and everything else to get to that. It's a really interesting toy, but there's a lot of engineering that has gone into it. So with this, I went and taught diploma students for art, painting and such. They could all pick it up in no time. So this is in Ho Chi Minh City. These are 6th through 11th graders. the theme was to create a sports-related toy. And they created this robot that kicks and another goalpost that scores.
Oh, Perry the Platypus.
Perry the Platypus. Say hi, guys. So what it tells you is that you don't need to be an engineer to get to any of these things. The tools today are so simple to pick up, and they can actually go and design these things. And the next stage is the stage of an innovator, when the maker did not have to solve anyone's problem, but now the innovator has to actually identify a problem, ideate, apply design thinking principles and things like that, and come up with a solution, and then make it. So, empathy, need definition, and solution development, and those are the things that I focus on. These are a week-long programs, and primarily teach, experience all these things. I take them out to the field. This is in rubber estates. They have to actually spend a whole day in a place, understand the problems within the space, within the ecosystem. Cattle fields, and these are MIT students. Okay, who came to Kerala, and I'll talk about that. Learning how to make ropes. I took a bunch of executives in Mumbai to the red light district. And 7 of them came with me, and we went and met with the prostitutes and to understand their social issues within their life. And these grown men were almost crying when they came back, and they went and started a program to help them and such. So unless you actually go live their life, you cannot understand the problem. And that is the whole thing of empathy. This is in a school for kids with cerebral palsy. And my students went and created solutions for them. And one of them took my phone and could really fast learn how to use an iPhone and took my picture. So this is went to tribal villages to teach kids. And so things like this. And last year, last year, I converted my ancestral home in my village, where I was born, into a fab lab. It's an accredited fab lab, first accredited fab lab in South India. So I have my 3D printers and machines and electronics and things like that. And we took 10 MIT students and 10 students from India, and we lived there for a month. We all lived together in the house. Hired a cook, and we were working on things all night and day. This is and 2 startups came out of that, out of the 5 projects that came in.
A few months ago, we've been talking about bringing a few MIT students to Kerala to work at Tech Top Innovation Center here. And then we decided to bring in other Indian students as well, so that it'd be a group team project working 10 MIT students and 10 Indian students from around the country. And they come together to look at and evaluate real problems in rural Indian communities.
The idea was to see if we could integrate these 2 groups and make field visits, understand the experiences in different communities, apply design thinking principles to identify issues, evaluate them as opportunities, and then create solutions.
This workshop has been a lot of fun, mostly because I got to know so many cool people from around the country, and even people from MIT that I didn't know before.
I'm usually a product designer. In this scope, I decided to do more on business, which is completely different than what I'm usually doing.
At the end of these 4 weeks, the idea is that they should have a plan to address any one single problem or an opportunity that they have identified and do something that can leave an impact in this community.
It's nice to have resources, the electronics, the Arduinos, and all the sensors available at our disposal at all times. It is nice to identify problems which will impact them directly and have some impact in the future.
The new business skills and entrepreneurship innovation that they see around them that's already going on in India, they can also take back some of that to MIT and apply it to what they're doing there.
One of the students is SDM student. I don't know if you noticed that, Sharon. So now, the point I stress on is that you have to fail. Do, and absolutely you must fail. If you're not failing enough, you're not trying. That means if you're 100%, if you succeed 100% of the time, you're well within your zone of comfort. Okay, it's like me putting one bar at 1 foot and jumping over it and congratulating myself. So I believe you have to fail about 50% of the time if you're around on the edges. That's the only way you can actually build your zone of comfort. And if you look at, primarily, I always start with the unmet human need as a core, because each of these things you can have multiple strategies to solve it, and each strategy could have different kinds of products and different kinds of technologies. But if you start from defining the need, you actually have all the options open in front of you. Okay, and that basically is design thinking. And the other one is the curse of the engineer. And how many of you have had, I have this great technology, let me force fit it to solve a problem. And you go from right to left and you reach here and realize that there are much easier way to solve the same problem. So as design thinkers, you had to start from the right. And some of things like this. One of the core was, one of the problem was to create something for the kitchen in an Indian household. And they created a thing to dehusk a coconut, and welded the parts together and designed it, So it doesn't have to be high technology, but you should understand the problem first and create all kinds of things. So there's more fun in actually welding things and doing things like this, pure mechanical products. So next stage is a stage of an entrepreneur. Now you know what kind of problem to solve, and now how to get it to the market. So the entrepreneurship boot camps that I run are multi-week long. Actually, the University of Rhode Island has made it into a three credit course. In January, I teach them for 2 weeks, every day from 9 o'clock till 9 at night, including weekends for 2 weeks. And they go through all these process multiple times to get to the end, hopefully change their thinking. And that's pretty much what I'm looking at. So again, the tools are primarily identifying the opportunity, creating the solution, reaching the customer, and understanding the financial plan. One story that it really stood out, when these kids from MIT came there, they found these women in my village who make soap in their house. They make, with coconut oil and absolute pure soap. They have been doing for a long time. And they identified this and they said, okay, we want to create something around that. And they learned how to make the soap. They met with the women and they figured out how they make it, and they learned the process on their own. And they studied the market and they decided to make soaps for hotels. So the tiny 15-gram soaps, and they wanted to make sure that it is wrapped and packaged so nicely so that it doesn't look like in a plastic bag. It is actually made with cut saris, and each soap would have a story of the lady who made it. So when you open it, you actually see the story of the person who made it. And they created, and they all 3D printed the molds, and they went through. They met with the hotel owners, and they actually created this whole thing called kada. Kada means story in Indian language. So they created this startup called Kada, and the whole idea was that can you create this, take the same concept and apply to other industries, maybe spices or any other kind of things that are made in the villages. So when zero is uninitiated, a maker primarily hacks things, and he or she is trying to make things that are feasible without even looking for who really wants this. An innovator actually hacks a problem. He has to make it even desirable. An entrepreneur primarily hacks an opportunity. He has to make it all the way till it is viable. But this is the way you need to actually train them from the beginning. And primarily, the primary focus in all these things is self-efficacy or the self-confidence in actually jumping in and doing things. Self-efficacy is defined as confidence to jump into something that you really don't know, but the confidence that you can figure it out on your way out. That after you have done and failed a few times, you realize that you throw me into anything, I can still figure it out. And that is what you're trying to build. So at the end of it, they're all system thinkers. That means a maker is looking just inside a product. He's looking at what is the user experience I need to create. I ask them to write the user manual first. So they come back and say, I want to design this. I said, write the user manual. Because when you design with technology first without actually understanding how exactly the user uses it. Once you write the manual, you realize, okay, when I press this button, this happens. When I do this, that happens. So now you can actually go back and design to match that. So you are putting the user right at the front. So Maker thinks within a system, which is a product system. Mechanical programming and fabrication and such. Innovator has to look at the problem system, slightly larger. Look at why does this happen? What ecosystem does it happen in? Who are the stakeholders and such? What are the current solutions and how do we change them? And obviously, the entrepreneur should look at it as a business system, slightly larger. Who is the customer here? Your beneficiary may not be the customer. Someone else, if you're buying a toy for a kid is a beneficiary, but the customer is still the parent. Okay, so you need to understand all these things. How do you reach them, and what is the value that they're getting, and such. So, in one of the workshops I did, this was done as part of my thesis, the first workshop. I took 50 students in a rural college. Taught them for 6 weeks, through December and all the way into January. And every day, from 4 in the evening after the class till night, and all day weekends. So I was there for Christmas and such. We had 50 students, from all first years through fourth year, all the different disciplines in the engineering school. Almost half of them were females. And at the end of it, 30 out of the 50 went and started companies. This is in a school that had 1 student startup in the last 12 years. And they started 13 companies. 8 of them are still running. But they have moved. You can never actually stop this. The very interesting thing is, once you fail, others may think of it as an entrepreneur who failed. An entrepreneur thinks of it as someone who has just learned about 80% of how to do it. So he wants to go do it again. Okay. So I had to, the cultural forces were very, very strong, because when halfway through the program, there were parents who complained that the kids were talking about they want to start companies. Okay, and what do you mean? And I want him to find a job, settle down, and and I said, please hold, just let them finish the 6 weeks program. And at the end of the 6 weeks, many of the parents came back and said, I see a change in him. He wakes up at 6:30 in the morning and he wants to go to school and he wants to do things. Because we are all victims of our own university systems, where we are forced to learn certain things and never actually pushed to our limits. And they had a lot more capability than what they were pushed through in their classes. So I even had to go meet with their parents and say, please give this kid 2 years. Let him go try something, and I'll stand behind him and such. And they all picked up. And this company started making sleep apnea detectors for neonates, finally for detecting SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Okay. They're engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, never even knew what this thing was. But once they started going out into the field and started talking to people, they found the small little primary health care places where they had neonates come in and they are sent back home because they don't have enough things to monitor this kid. And sleep apnea in adults, when they hold their breath for 45, 50 minutes or 50 seconds or something, and then they breathe and come back to life. Babies don't. So you only have about 30 seconds to 40 seconds to detect if the baby is holding their breath. So they came up with this idea of using little boots for the baby, and through infrared and through passing the light through the foot, you can check the blood oxygen content and if it is changing. Okay, and once it starts dropping, so within few seconds, they have these little vibration motors at the bottom, so it will tickle the baby to wake up. And once the baby wakes up, then everything is okay. It's just that they don't wake up. And then they have gone out to do other things after that. So the thing is, these kids they in 6 weeks, if we can make this kind of a change, in the student community. I ran these programs all across the Make-Off as a 48-hour programs all across Kuala Lumpur, and I even ran in Lausanne for executives. The 1 week long innovation programs all over. This is my hometown. This is my house, and and long, multi-week long entrepreneurship program, and of course, even that. Let's talk about ecosystem. And ecosystem is so important. And in Malaysia, we started discussing this thing about how do we develop this whole program. I'm working with the World Bank to see if we can create a program across the country. And we want to target university students, primarily because they are like at the cusp of being free, because in college, school students, they're still trying to figure out how to get into a college and such. College students have a little bit of more independence, and they have a little bit more mature. So we want to focus on college students. So the whole idea is go to different colleges, train a core team of students and some trainers, and walk away and see how the group behaves after that. And help them build the local ecosystem, innovation center and such. And once they say they want to be an entrepreneur, let the outside existing infrastructure take them on. Because that's not where I want. As I said, I'm working in the prequel side. So in the same flow, Asia School of Business, this is the place where I work. The idea is create programs, make up movements to change the flow, train faculty in colleges, establish innovation centers in the same schools, and even train them to become entrepreneurs, and then leave it to outside agencies to build the rest. So there are two things that I'm primarily focused on in these in the society. One is in the communities. One is employability. These kids who graduate from most of these colleges are not employable because the way they are taught is they never actually know mens et manus. So, and second is how do you help them become entrepreneurs. So I went right fast so that I can be on time. I'll take any questions.